Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Hasan. I'm a social worker. I work with Centennial College as a faculty and I study social work at Ryerson University. We have created this video on Sanism and Anti-Oppressive social work practice for educational purposes. Hope this video will be useful for you. In this video, we have interviewed some educators, social worker, mental health worker, community activists to define what is their understanding about Sanism, how it impacts our community, and how to organize our communities and train our social worker on anti-Sanist social work.
Hi, so I'm Jennifer Whittle. I'm the chair of the Community Services Department here at Centennial College. And I am excited that Dr. Hasan Mahbub is making this video on Sanism. I think it's really important that we have education and discussion about Sanism in all of our community services programs because it is not talked about enough.
Sanism to me is an oppression that is directed towards people who are believed, suspected, labeled of not being sane enough or rational or well or whatever words you want to substitute there to take up what we would call productive roles in society.
Sanism is systematic subjugation of people who have received mental health diagnosis or treatment. Sanism is an oppression and active form of discrimination. It excludes and marginalizes people by assigning them various levels like crazy or mad. Sanist system has forced involuntary treatment and sometimes kills people in distress. For example, Samiyatin and Andrew Loco. Sanism violates human rights and liberty. That's why this discussion is so important.
For me, Sanism is a form of discrimination that occurs in relation to people who are perceived to be or who are dealing with mental health challenges or who just seem maybe not normal.
Sanism basically is a form of ableism that involves discrimination against people with psychiatric histories or people who are perceived to be mentally other.
Our society looks at people who experience mental health challenges in a way that stigmatizes them for having that challenge. Our societal structures are based solely on the principle that being sane is the way we should be, and if we're not following according to that parameter, then there's something wrong with us.
For me, growing up in Jamaica, I saw that. I saw where folks could not talk about what was happening to them. I saw where people had issues discussing it with their family members. I saw where people had issues discussing it even at school. It was something that needed to be shoved under the rug, something that you did not discuss.
It has become so insidious and so everyday and so practiced and so normalized as an aspect of social control that it doesn't need anyone pushing it anymore. It doesn't need a perpetrator because it lives in social expectations, social norms, especially in these white spaces. She said, looking around her office. Whenever I talk about Sanism, I always talk about colonialism at the same time. Sanism is colonialism. Colonialism is Sanism. They need each other to perpetuate. They need each other to multiply. They need each other to replicate. And the ways in which Sanism works can be insidious. They could be secret. They could be right up front, bold in your face. They can work through us. They can come out of our mouths, even with a great deal of critical education or knowing. They can show up in our relationships. They can show up in our work practices. They may show up as professionalism, for instance. They may show up as credentialism. They may show up as education. But Sanism is an oppression that wants to protect white rationality and white logic and white ways of doing or acting or looking sane.
So when I was first asked to do this video, I really didn't know what to talk about because I have been educated under a colonial and very Western model for mental health therapy, and I wasn't quite sure how Sanism would tie into that. But as I continue to learn and read more about Sanism, I come to understand that the way in which we practice mental health therapy is very Sanist in current day, despite them using the words anti-oppressive practice, despite them using words like recovery and empowerment and consumer survivor. So the way that I understand Sanism is it's very sneaky. It's a sneaky way to still hold power over someone while pretending that you're giving power back to the client or patient or whatever the person would like to be called.
Sanism happens all the time when people say, oh, you're crazy or you're a psycho. It's the language is used in society all the time. We don't even notice it. And I think we need to do the job of actually pointing it out and raising the discussion with other people.
Sanism is a form of oppression which mad-identified, mad-labeled, or mad-perceived folks experience every day. Sanism is constantly impacting myself and the people I work with, and this happens in very complex, intersecting, and overlapping ways.
What's really important for me to recognize about Sanism is that it interacts with a lot of other forms of oppression and marginalization. So, I mean, I guess a famous example would be when we're thinking about how many people are pushed into asylums and other corrective facilities that way. Traditionally, it's been a lot of, white women who have been put in those facilities, whereas Black and brown and Indigenous people who have psychiatric histories are often the ones overrepresented in prisons.
One co-worker had a mental health issue. She was hospitalized, was treated, and returned to work, and I saw how the idea of Sanism was apparent in how she was treated upon return. She was brilliant, she was great at her job, but she seemed to have been discredited going forward. Any decision she made, any thing she brought forward was discredited due to the fact of we are aware now that she has a mental issue, so she cannot be the same. That is directly Sanism.
I do notice that doctors and social workers have far too much power when it comes to people's lives. They get to choose whether or not a person needs to be formed. Being formed means that they are brought to the hospital against their will, and usually will have to stay there 3 days to be assessed, sometimes longer. Sometimes if the doctor is busy and there's not enough beds, they'll be sent home, but usually they're picked up by the police, handcuffed, and brought to the hospital. These are things that people do all day, every day. Case managers do it as if it's nothing. It's something that we're encouraged to do because of liability concerns.
Anti-Sanist work to me involves listening, understanding, believing, and being aware that just because someone's reality doesn't align with yours doesn't make it any less real or any less valid for them.
I do know some things for sure, right, that are expressly anti-Sanist. And I think at the top of that list is understanding and continuing to push yourself about how Sanism works. Because when you could see it, when you could smell it, when you could taste it, then you could start to point it out to yourself and others. And you can start to see all of its lines, all of its victories, all of its institutions, the way it's inserted itself. And in the pointing out, you can do what you're doing, Dr. Hasan, right? And you could do that anti-Sanist education. And it might be a reading, it might be this video, it might be one conversation, right? One conversation that you have with someone about the use of language, or why is it that they're afraid of that person talking to someone that is not visible on the subway, right? So that anti-Sanist work for me always starts in consciousness raising, awareness building. And it could be 1, 2, 3 conversations. It could be a formal classroom setting. It could be one reading. It could be one blog. There's an anti-Sanist Twitter feed.
I think there's a number of ways in which we can take action and assist the people that we're working with. I look at it more from a structural and a personal and a community level. On a personal level, the folks that we encounter day to day who are having challenges, we can be empathetic, we can help them understand what they're going through, help them know that it is something that's very normal. Everybody experiences some kind of mental health challenge during their life.
I'm here today with the Mad Students Collective, which is basically a group for students at Ryerson and beyond who have been labeled mentally ill or crazy or mad or consider themselves to be psychiatric survivors or consumer survivors. And it's a space for us to meet and build community and get to know each other and relate on our experiences.
And I try to show that underneath of Sanism is colonial policies, colonial culture, classism, oppression, homophobia, racism. All these are major factors that actually perpetuate Sanism.
So the way that I would like to pursue anti-Sanist social work is to begin to highlight and shine the light on the ways that our therapy models are continuing to perpetuate Sanism in large mental health organizations. One example would be cognitive behavioral therapy. It's all the rage now, very hot, very in tune with anti-oppressive practice. However, the way that it's been packaged and sold to clinicians as something as you need to pay for to have a leg up in this society, in this practice, is very Sanist and very colonial. It's very capitalist, and it's not something that actually holds the values of anti-Sanism. Another example would be DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. One thing that I'm doing in my research is shining the light on how DBT actually appropriates a lot of Indigenous values and beliefs and repackages it as something that's new in mental health therapy. So one thing I challenge my peers, including you folks who are watching this video, is to continue to enter mental health spaces with a critical mind and continue to question where things come from. Even though if they seem like they're new and they're really radical, continue to question where they come from and what the motivation is behind this work.
So I think we need to discuss it as a society, and we need to think about how we, especially those of us working in community services, can act and proactively change this matter of Sanism.
I think that Sanism needs to be something that's discussed across all social services, particularly in mental health agencies, where most of what people do is form, make sure people are on medication, make sure that people are compliant, and care very little for the well-being of the person in general. And so that needs to stop.
Stop Sanism! Challenge Sanism!
Unlearn Sanism!